Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Our nation marking Veterans Day today. President Joe Biden took part in the annual wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery. Vice President Kamala Harris was also in attendance alongside First Lady Jill Biden and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. The president went on to deliver remarks at the Memorial Amphitheater. Here is some of that speech.
This is the last time I will stand here at Arlington as Commander-in-Chief. It's been the greatest honor of my life to lead you, to serve you, to care for you, to defend you, just as you defended us, generation after generation after generation. You are the greatest fighting force, and this is not hyperbole, the finest fighting force in the history of the world. I'll never forget standing at Valley Forge, our nation's first soldiers laid down their lives to deliver a nation where everyone is entitled to inalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
The president also spoke about his administration's achievements over the last 4 years. That includes the passage of 30 bipartisan laws to support veterans and their families, caregivers, and survivors. Mr. Biden also announced the VA will expand the number of cancers covered under the PACT Act. A live look at the White House, where President Biden makes good on something Donald Trump did not do when Mr. Trump lost to Mr. Biden in 2020, a meeting between the outgoing president and the incoming president. Wednesday, Joe Biden will welcome the president-elect Donald Trump to the Oval Office to begin the peaceful transfer of power. CBS News can now project President-elect Donald Trump as the winner of Arizona. This after enough ballots have been counted to solidify that Arizona win and really the Republican sweep of all 7 battleground states ahead of Donald Trump's second term in office. Now, speaking of that second term, some breaking news out of Mar-a-Lago. The Trump administration is expected to tap Stephen Miller as his deputy chief of staff. This also comes after some key appointments from over the weekend. Former acting ICE Director Homan tapped to be the administration's border czar, where security is concerned there at the American border with Mexico. And then New York Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik taking on the role of UN ambassador. Susie Wiles filling in the role of chief of staff. She, by the way, is the first woman to serve in that position. So CBS News campaign reporter Torian Small is in West Palm Beach, Florida, where the president-elect assembles people around his policy promises. Torian, walk us through these latest cabinet picks and perhaps some of the other names that have been floated.
Reed, these are some of the most staunchest supporters of the president. Stefanik, as you know, is the House Republican Conference chair right now. She was also a chief bulldog, attack dog for the Trump campaign in her role as surrogate during the trail. We also know, as you said, Homan is the former ICE, leader of ICE. He is pretty much in lockstep on Trump's immigration policies, known for that really tough on the border position. Miller, as you also said there, tapped for deputy chief of staff. He served previously as Trump's senior advisor to the White House. These are people who obviously are pretty much in line with the Trump agenda moving forward. We also, though, found out this morning that Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri withdrew his name for consideration for Attorney General. He's the former state Attorney General, now Senator, opting instead to push Trump's legislative agenda through Congress.
So, Torian, it's also clear that former Trump administration officials like Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo, they're not going to be a part of the future of the new Trump administration. Walk us through that decision here, and what's the history?
Yeah, Trump's very public decision, I should add, could indicate that there's still a rift between these former staffers, especially with Nikki Haley. Trump promised on the campaign trail that she would not be a part of this administration. Nikki Haley told CBS News that she hasn't talked to the Trump campaign since June. She said she was willing and available to campaign for the Trump campaign, but they opted not to utilize her instead. She did, though, say in a social media post that she respected his decision. She admired his previous administration and is a supporter of the president, obviously, as she lended her endorsement over to him.
And before you leave us, I have to ask about this headline that really got my attention today and the attention of a lot of people. We know that appointments require Senate confirmation, right? But President-elect Trump is reportedly demanding that Republicans allow some nominees to bypass that process. How can he do that?
Yeah, this is a true purity test for these Republicans looking to succeed Mitch McConnell. Senator Rick Scott of Florida said that he's willing to abide by this to push through Trump's appointments. This is a very in the weeds type of procedure. We've seen this utilized during Trump's first term. Democrats were able to filibuster by calling this procedural reset or recess in order to push through this session. But again, there's still Democrats hold this very slight majority in the Senate, so it's unclear if they'll be able to pass through. But this is Trump's mandate. He's telling all Republican senators to essentially push through his appointments before the new session starts so he can get to work immediately.
But without those confirmation hearings, the American public can't hear the people who are up for confirmation answer any questions, correct?
Correct. And the argument behind the Trump campaign is that Democrats, these are long drawn out processes, and he believes that work need to be done now. So he's saying Democrats will look to filibuster this down the road, but ultimately, instead of a several year long appointment confirmation process, he's hoping to utilize this specific procedure in the law that could allow that to happen much quicker.
Torian Small, thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us today on the stream. Let's look live at Capitol Hill right now, where lawmakers in the House have one big question, and that's who's going to hold the power in the House as they await the results for the final 19 House races. So CBS News continues to characterize House control as leaning Republican. Democrats would need a net gain of 4 seats to win a House majority. 19 races not called at this hour, and a lot of those races still considered a toss-up. In fact, at least 11 House seats changed parties over this election. So it is a changing landscape, and of course a lot of people biting their nails over this one. Let's go live to CBS News correspondent Scott McFarland. Scott, we know as congressional correspondent you look at this and you really get down to the science of this. This is orientation week for those new members. So how does this affect those who are there saying, hello, my name is, and I'm new to the group?
Yeah, California really holds so many cards in so many ways when it comes to the U.S. House. California is still accepting mail-in ballots. As long as they were postmarked by Election Day, they can arrive tomorrow and still be counted. So the results, the tabulations, and the projections in California are sluggish by design. So the majority of the U.S. House likely can't be determined or measured until everything in California is counted. So at this moment, it appears Republicans are projected or on a trajectory to win, but there are more races still to be decided and nothing is final yet. Let's put that aside. New members of Congress, the representatives-elect, are arriving here right now for orientation, which begins tomorrow and runs through the week. And these are important sessions. Orientation is not just how to find the men's room and ladies' room and how to find the committee rooms. It's how do you function in this very new job that you've never had before. This is a distinctively difficult job because all 435 members of the U.S. House, all 100 members of the U.S. Senate are not just federally elected representatives. They basically operate their own small business. They have to hire their own staff, figure out their own operations. They run somewhat independently. There's a lot of training, there's a lot of learning, and that does begin as early as tomorrow. For those still to be decided races, those few in California, the ones we're still waiting on in Arizona, and the really close races that may go to a recount, there'll be some late arrivals for orientation.
Yeah, to say the least. Scott, another question for you. The House has another job. The Senate has another job, and that is filling Mitch McConnell's seat. It's up for grabs. A handful of senators looking to fill that spot. Over on the Senate side, what more can you tell us about that?
A Wednesday morning Senate Republican leadership election is planned for the U.S. Capitol. A couple things you should know about it. It will decide who the next Republican leader is for as long as a generation, the person who will hold all the cards and the ability to determine what's on the Senate floor, what gets a vote, and what doesn't. That is outsized power, even by Washington standards. But this vote happens behind closed doors in the Capitol. What's more, it happens by secret ballot. It's not a public vote, so you put your chosen name into a secret system. There's no way to tell officially who voted for whom, which complicates things. It complicates the lobbying and advocating on behalf of a preferred candidate. And this is a three-way race right now, and a particularly interesting one. It has John Thune, Mitch McConnell's deputy, the longtime senator from South Dakota, John Cornyn, the longtime senator from Texas, and Rick Scott of Florida, who just won on Tuesday his second term to the U.S. Senate. Elon Musk, the Trump ally, has already expressed his favorite. He wants Rick Scott, long thought to be the long shot, because he may more closely align with Trump's priorities. This is an otherwise sleepy affair, but we'll get used to this over the next 4 years. It's a sleepy affair until Donald Trump weighs in on it. Then it becomes a high-stakes battle. It's headed in that direction ahead of Wednesday.
Wow. And let's talk about the pieces of legislation that are still on the table, several at that, including the government spending bill. The expiration date for that is what, December 20th, Scott? So the question is, can we expect to see this on the top of the to-do list for lawmakers in the coming weeks?
You got to avert a shutdown, which means they have to pass funding for the government by December 20th. Yes, the week of Christmas. Every indication is they'll find another short-term deal just to keep the government open until 2025, until the all-Republican, likely federal government. If the House goes to Republicans, the Senate's already there, the White House is already there, they can get in lockstep and synchronize their own government funding plan. When you have one party ruled in Washington, one thing usually falls off the table: the threats of government shutdowns and debt ceiling crises. This may be the last showdown for quite a while.
All right, so we can file that graphic away, maybe for a little while at CBS News. Scott McFarlane, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much. CBS News 24/7 in your communities. And when we come back, we're going to hear from CBS News' Tom Hansen on the wildfires and really the deadly toll as firefighters do battle on this Veterans Day. Right now, firefighters trying to put flames out on the East Coast and on the West Coast. Stay with us. We are watching our monitors for sites like these, wildfires, really on both coasts of the United States today. So first, this one, Hewitt, New Jersey. That's about an hour northwest of New York City. The Jennings Creek Fire, as it's named, along the state border, blamed now for one death. Fire officials say this fire season in New Jersey really shattered records, more than 530 wildfires to report and counting. Fire officials say one of those fires is now 20% contained. Listen.
We did an aerial recon mission this morning, and our current estimate is 2,500 acres in New York State and 2,500 acres in New Jersey. We currently have 20% containment on the fire. 10 of that is in New York and 10 of that is in New Jersey. Assets currently assigned to this fire: we have 33 5-person hand crews, 5 engines, 4 water tankers, 6 helicopters, and we have about 230 personnel in the field. With that, I will go to Pete.
Well, and a tragic human touchstone to that fire. An 18-year-old Parks employee who loved the outdoors, loved serving there, has lost life. CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen reports drought conditions causing hundreds of fires in that area.
The Jennings Creek fire in New Jersey has scorched 3,000 acres and has threatened dozens of buildings. The scent of smoke and reports the fire is close, prompting some local residents to leave.
And my neighbor said he saw some flames like by the side of the road and everything, so it's time to go.
The fire, fueled by a record-setting drought in the region that has caused 537 wildfires since October 1st.
That's roughly 500 more fires than we had this same period last year.
And now those wildfires turning deadly. Dario Vasquez, an 18-year-old New York State Parks employee, was killed by a falling tree while helping to contain part of the Jennings Creek fire.
We got the chills, and I just can't believe an 18-year-old kid would risk his life for our houses and everyone here. So honestly, it was devastating.
Since Friday, a number of fires have broken out across New Jersey and parts of New York, some even visible from Manhattan's skyline, and one blaze even took over sections of this Brooklyn park. Wildfires also erupted near Reading, Pennsylvania, and just north of Boston, this one in Lynn, Massachusetts, is burning more than 400 acres.
Oh, this is so sad.
And officials are going to be watching this area very closely because wind gusts today are expected to reach up to 20 miles an hour. Those dry conditions are also expected to stretch over the next several days. So firefighters like the ones behind me are standing by to jump in if needed. Tom Hansen, CBS News, Hewitt, New Jersey.
Thank you. Let's now go to California. The mountain fire 60 miles east of Los Angeles, burning hundreds of homes. Right now, an army of nearly 3,000 firefighters out battling the flames on this Veterans Day. CBS News Los Angeles' Tina Patel reports on the weather conditions actually, at this moment at least, helping those fire crews.
The winds have calmed down over the last couple of days, and firefighters are taking advantage of that to start to get control of this fire. They now have 36% containment, and that means that evacuation orders and warnings are starting to be lifted. But now neighbors are coming back and seeing just how much damage this fire caused. We're told there's about 200 homes that were either damaged or destroyed, and about 12,000 acres of farmlands that, of course, will take a number of years to recover from. We are told that firefighters are bracing for another round of wind tomorrow. They're hoping that today they'll be able to make a little bit more progress so that it is not as dangerous to neighborhoods. Right now, the fire is burning mostly in a rural area that is more mountainous, so there's not as many homes that are being threatened. But again, it's all going to depend on the weather over the next couple of days. And that's why even though some people are being allowed back into their neighborhoods, they're being told to stay alert until this fire is completely under control. In Camarillo, Tina Patel, back to you.
So it seems like Tina just showed us that really remind us why firefighters depend on the expertise of meteorologists. What do they have to look forward to as they battle that fire?
You know, all that rain that we've been talking about all morning long up in the Pacific Northwest, that's a part of a cold front, and it will sweep throughout that region into Southern California later tomorrow into Wednesday's forecast too. But the big issue with that has to do with the winds. We're not concerned about rain by the time it makes its way down there. They're going to get light traces of showers, if anything. Really what we're gearing up for is some heavy winds right around the corner, anywhere up to around 60 miles per hour from that same cold front you see on the screen right here, pushing through the Pacific Northwest, heading into the forecasted hours late tonight, early tomorrow throughout all of California. Areas like Southern California are still dry right now, all the way up into northern parts like the Bay. They're receiving a little bit of rain currently. Here's what's happening though. All the way down into the mountain fire, still at 20,000 acres, just a little bit more than that, and 31% containment, which is a huge improvement over the weekend. Now, the winds are going to start changing directions. That Pacific breeze will continue to push the winds inland, and no longer are we dealing with an air quality advisory due to that. However, the other big concern for us is a wind advisory that lasts until 9 o'clock tonight, with wind gusts at those peak elevations anywhere up to around 60 miles per hour. And that's hard for the boots on the ground to actually get to those elevations, so we continue to monitor this closely. Here's what I was talking about earlier. Light showers, if anything, will sweep throughout the Los Angeles basin, stretching all the way up into those mountains too. But we're changing gears now. Fire weather conditions down in the south, and then of course fire weather conditions all the way off into the northeast. Areas like New Jersey dealing with fires right now. The Jennings Creek fire currently at 3,000 acres, about 10% containment, and that still is burning right now, and it's moving that smoke at the surface level off into areas like Bridgeport, and we're continuing to watch those winds really develop heading into our Tuesday forecast. Wind speeds anywhere up to around 30 miles per hour are expected. And when it comes to fires up there, with how dry they've been dealing with conditions recently in the Pacific Northwest and all throughout the Northeast too, the big concern is those spot fires with the winds. So we'll monitor that closely. We'll continue to keep a close eye on them, but from the south all the way up into the north, everywhere in between, we're dealing with dry conditions.
It's crazy when we say the words "and counting" when we talk about those fires in New Jersey, that because of the wind, they could just turn into more fires.
You're right.
Jess, thank you for watching it.
Of course.
A mass shooting to report. This on the campus of Tuskegee University in Alabama. One is dead, many more injured. When we come back, more on the arrest and word of a machine gun found. Stay with us. Let's go to Alabama on the map. Tuskegee University tells its students to stay home today following a deadly shooting on campus over the weekend. The 18-year-old killed, more than a dozen injured. CBS News correspondent Jason Allen reports the violence broke out on the last day of the university's homecoming week celebration.
There are no classes here at Tuskegee University this morning. They're taking the day off while investigators continue to process evidence from this shooting. This all ended really what was a large party on the campus at the end of their 100th homecoming celebration, a celebration that had gone on throughout the week with, according to what the sheriff told us, really no problems whatsoever and no indications of any problems leading up to this shooting. One of the victims who we talked to, a student here, said she saw students running toward her in the moments before the gunshots started to ring out. That student was hit 3 times. She said she had to take cover in between cars, waiting as long as 40 minutes for paramedics to reach her. She was one of 16 people who were shot. An 18-year-old who was not a student but was here on the campus was one person who was killed. There were 4 people who were injured, who were not shot but just injured in the chaos surrounding all of this. Investigators did arrest a 25-year-old man who they said was seen leaving the campus and was in possession, they said, of a handgun with a machine gun conversion device. He has been charged in federal court with the possession of a machine gun, and investigators are continuing to search for more evidence this morning.
Jason Allen reporting there. Breaking news out of Indiana. Just moments ago, a jury reached a verdict in the trial of Richard Allen. He is the man prosecutors say killed 2 teen girls and then dumped their bodies on this trail in Delphi back in 2017. Once we know more from what those jurors have decided, we'll bring you that here on CBS News 24/7. By the way, if convicted, Allen faces up to 130 years in sentences in prison. A manhunt is underway today in Baltimore. Police looking for a man named Jared Taylor. They say he illegally manufactured 80 ghost guns, used a 3D printer. Here they are. Officers say they found semi-automatic rifles, handguns, an AK-47, and 1,300 rounds of ammunition. Let's move on the map to South Carolina. An update on the story we brought you last week about 43 monkeys who escaped from that research facility. Remember that? 25 of the 43 monkeys now back home, safe and sound. They took off from that Alpha Genesis research facility in that area, Yamasee, about, an hour's drive from Savannah, Georgia. The CEO says he can see the remaining 18 jumping back and forth in the woods nearby. Just leave a little food out for them. Maybe the rest will come home. Video to our monitors out of Texas tell the story of a heroic rescue. You can watch this as firefighters climb that ladder, smash a window, and they're strapped on that second story of a burning apartment. What a story this is. Listen.
Come to my boys! Come on, Liam!
This is in Granbury, less than an hour's drive out of Fort Worth. The mother said she grabbed her 4-year-old but couldn't reach 2-year-old Liam. Fortunately, because of the heroic efforts of these firefighters who braved the flames and that high ladder there, both children are alive and they are okay. When we come back, many world leaders at a climate summit will take you to Azerbaijan with word of what they want to do. Listen, President-elect Donald Trump says he's going to pull out of the Paris agreements. He believes climate change is a hoax. What can be done at this meeting where climate change is concerned with the changing tides in the United States? We'll be right back. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. I'm Reed Cowan. So President-elect Donald Trump shaping up the list of leaders joining him for a second term in the White House. He announced former ICE acting director Tom Homan will take over border control. But listen to this. Homan had this to say to 60 Minutes just days before Donald Trump won the election.
I hear a lot of people say, the talk of a mass deportation is racist. It's threatening to the immigrant community. It's not threatening to the immigrant community. It should be threatening to the illegal immigrant community. But on the heels of historic illegal immigration crisis, that has to be done.
What would the largest deportation in American history look like to you?
Well, let me tell you what's not going to be first. It's not going to be a mass sweep of neighborhoods. It's not going to be building concentration camps. I've read it all. It's ridiculous.
But if mass deportation is not going to be, as you said, massive sweeps and concentration camps,
There'll be concentrated,
what is it?
There'll be targeted arrest.
He was also asked by our reporter there, what about separating families? He said families can be deported together. So let's bring in Bart Jansen right now on the stream for more on this. He's the Justice Department reporter for USA Today. What more do we know about his history on these immigration policies?
Well, he was a bit of a lightning rod during Trump's first administration when he was head of ICE. He was there at the time when they had a zero tolerance policy so that even those people applying for asylum were turned away. And that's what led to that, what was called a family separation policy, because what in effect happened was if the parents were detained separately from the children, then families got separated and something like 5,000 or more children were separated from their parents. So he has been unafraid to conduct the strictest enforcement of immigration laws, and that's what we're expecting in this second term.
So a hardliner by many estimates. Stephen Miller also going to be a part of the Trump administration. He's also a hardliner on immigration issues. What say you about what he could do and what he could bring to realizing Donald Trump's promise to voters relative to immigration policy?
Well, Miller has been the architect and one of the most vocal advocates of what they've been calling mass deportations. There are an estimated 11 million immigrants who lack legal permission to be in the United States, and they have said they could target all of them. In more refined statements, Trump and his allies have said first they will target criminal aliens and so deport them, get rid of them the fastest. But what's unclear to immigration advocates is that anyone who asks for asylum typically gets court hearings. Those hearings are backed up for years.
Right.
And so if they get rid of the hearing process, then that would perhaps move things more swiftly.
Bart Jansen, Justice Department reporter with USA Today, thank you so much for speaking with us. I have a feeling we'll be talking a lot in the weeks and months to come. A live look at Capitol Hill right now, where orientation for the newest members of the 119th Congress begins this week as the GOP is on the brink of clinching control of the U.S. House. Now, if that happens, it's still a big if, ballots still being counted in California. President-elect Donald Trump, he has the Senate, he has the House, and he has the keys to that smooth road to realizing his policy promises. So this is Democrats are looking inward, doing some introspection about how they lost on election night and lost big at that. House Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi of the state of California, one of those being introspective. Here's something she's looking back on.
The president endorsed Kamala Harris immediately. That really made it almost impossible to have a primary at that time. If it had been much earlier, it would have been different.
So you heard it there, Pelosi looking backwards in time to primary strategy. But let's go live to CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist Joel Payne. Joel, it's good to have you with us on the stream on a Monday or any day. So Vermont's Bernie Sanders says Dems abandoned the working class. California's Ro Khanna says Dems really did not have what he calls a compelling enough vision for the economy. What say you?
I'm not sure if the policy abandoned the working class, but certainly the message seems to have alienated the working class. And that's something that Democrats need to take a good hard look at and reevaluate. How are we putting these messages in front of these voters to help them understand that the policies that we believe in and that we're pushing really will make their lives better, especially when you compare them to what Donald Trump and Republicans want to do. It's very clear Donald Trump has been able to find a way to reach these folks. And I think Democrats, I like to say losses can be very clarifying. And this loss certainly will be clarifying for the party. There's a lot of work to do to rebuild the Democratic Party going into 2026 and 2028.
So introspection, rebuilding, and, looking forward, former Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta said that he thinks Republicans may show in the history books that they overplayed their hand and that could create an opening as soon as the midterms. What do you think the future of the Democratic Party looks like because of that introspection and maybe looking at things with clarity, like you say?
I think I tend to agree with Secretary Panetta's view on that. I think it's very likely that Republicans will overreach. They overreached in this election. It's just that voters decided that they kind of had a stubborn belief that Republicans had a better hand to play on the economy, and economic anxiety ruled the day. So I actually think that what Democrats are going to need to do is hold Republicans accountable to the mandate that voters actually sent them there with. They sent them there with a mandate to make them feel better about the economy. That means that Republicans shouldn't be doing things that are going to make the economy worse. You know what will make the economy worse? Deporting a bunch of people from this country illegally. You know what will make the economy worse? Putting tariffs in place that are going to be inflationary. And so I think you're going to expect to hear a lot from Democrats in terms of holding Donald Trump accountable. I think the last thing also is, for a long time, Democrats have treated Donald Trump as if he is this kind of virus that exists outside of politics. I think it's high time for Democrats to somewhat submit to and accept the fact that Donald Trump is as regular in politics as any other politician, and hold him accountable and treat him accountable like you would Mitt Romney, John McCain, George W. Bush. I think Democrats are going to have to reorient the way that we approach Donald Trump, focus on what he does less than what he says, or more than what he says.
Right. And do you think that could be a retooling in more social policy, like gay marriage, like abortion? Will we see less of an emphasis on those policy matters and more of an emphasis on people's wallets?
Well, I don't know any Democrat that wants to target communities, particularly these vulnerable communities. And by the way, I don't think that voters want to do that either. I think it would be a misread of this election to suggest that. Democrats ran on a similar message in 2022 of protecting those communities and did very well relative to expectations. I think that this election was an economic election, and I think Democrats are wise to focus on an economic message that reaches the working class. And I think they are also wise to focus on holding Donald Trump accountable on focusing on the economy. Anything Donald Trump does that doesn't focus on the economy feels like a vulnerability he's creating for himself. And I think Democrats would be wise to hold him to his word on that.
Well, and they also have a job to do. They have to fill a job by March 1st for party leader. Who do you see taking the reins?
Well, I assume you're talking about the Democratic National Committee.
Right.
Look, there are a lot of talented folks within the party. Jamie Harrison, I think, did a really solid job of kind of getting us through this Biden era to very abnormal time in Democratic politics. If I was looking for the next Democratic National Committee leader, I want someone who is a party builder at the grassroots level. You need a 50-state strategy. About 15, 20 years ago, Howard Dean took over the Democratic Party. And look, people have different opinions about what Chairman Dean did in that role. But one thing he did do, he executed a 50-state strategy. Democrats should not be seeding elections in places like Missouri, Indiana, Florida. Democrats need to field competitive candidates and competitive agendas in those places. And so that includes registering a lot to voters. That includes being on the ground, not just at election time, but right now. And so I want a party leader who is going to do that work now so that at election time, the trust is built and that voters understand that Democrats are working in their interest.
Joel Payne, CBS News political contributor. Always a great conversation. Thank you so much. We hope to have you back in the weeks ahead. And now riding our monitors to Azerbaijan, where this year's United Nations Climate Conference kicks off. Butts in the seats, so to speak. Thousands of leaders there, in fact, in the public and private sector now coming together to discuss how to stop global warming in its tracks. So let's bring in Dan Lashoff. He's a U.S. director of the World Resources Institute. Question for you right now. Donald Trump is the president-elect. He's been quoted as saying and feeling like climate change is a hoax. Can anything get done in a concrete way in reducing global emissions and reducing the temperature of this earth in this environment with Donald Trump coming in as the president?
Yes, it can. And the reason is economics, as your previous guest was talking about. The fact is that the clean energy transition is well underway, much further along than it was when Trump first came into office. And that will continue to drive emission reductions as we build more solar, wind, more electric vehicles are bought. And that is happening because those are just better options. They're less expensive. They perform better. So we'll see progress. The problem is that President-elect Trump, when he assumes office, will do things that will slow the progress at a time when we need to be accelerating it.
Well, and let's speak about that and really play this out. Say President-elect Donald Trump pulls us out of the Paris Agreement. Could we see other nations follow suit and pull out, China among them?
I don't think so. He pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement last time and predicted that it would collapse, but not a single country followed the U.S. to exit the Paris Agreement. And I think the resolve of other countries is at least as strong, if not stronger now, to stay in. In fact, I think by pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement again, what he'll be doing is damaging the U.S., America's reputation and reducing our influence around the world. But it won't cause the Paris Agreement to collapse.
Another major theme really is who pays for the turnaround in climate change, nation to nation. As it pertains to writing out the checks and who will write out those checks, how does the new change in the Trump administration coming in really affect who writes the checks?
Well, right. The focus of the conference that's taking place in Azerbaijan now is on climate finance and developing a new goal, particularly to help the most vulnerable countries deal with the consequences of climate change, which we're seeing all around the world. The U.S. has had a hard time getting support for that agenda through Congress, even under President Biden. And I do see President Trump as being a major obstacle to the U.S. making its fair share of a contribution. So the question really now is how much do other countries step up, particularly China, which has in the past said we're a developing country, we don't have to contribute to these funds, but it's now a very wealthy country and should be contributing to help the most vulnerable countries deal with the consequences of climate change. The U.S. was under President Biden really pressuring China to step up and play that role. President Trump won't do that, and so I think it makes it more difficult. But again, here the question will be: will the EU step into that void?
All right. Well, good to have the conversation with you. We appreciate you joining us on CBS News 24/7. Much more to come on this for sure. When we come back, we are getting word of a verdict in a double murder case. Teenage girls murdered and then dumped on a hiking trail. Now jurors are just about to let the world know what they decide in this murder case. We have some breaking news out of Delphi, Indiana. Jurors reach a verdict in the double murder trial of Richard Allen. He is the man the prosecutors say killed these two teenage girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, dumping their bodies along this trail in 2017. The defense says the prosecution's timeline doesn't add up, pointing to Allen's time in solitary confinement to argue mental illness led him to make false confessions. So joining us now on this breaking news as we await that verdict to be actually handed down so that the world can see what the jurors decided, CBS News legal contributor Rebecca Roife. Rebecca, the jury deliberated for roughly 18 hours. Is that sort of a hint as to how this is going?
It can be. I mean, that's a rather long time, but they did come to a verdict. So it's hard to know. You know, usually we say rule of thumb, the longer that the jury is out, the better that is for the defense. But again, this was a complicated case and they could have been going through the evidence carefully. So I think there's really no clear conclusion we can draw from the fact that they've been out that many hours.
What stood out to you during this trial? And do you have any sense of whether the argument by the defense really has teeth with the jurors in their mind?
Yeah, what stood out to me was that there were a number of pieces of evidence that seemed to tie this man to the murder, but none of them directly. That the defense did have a reasonable argument to make that the prosecution had no DNA evidence and that the eyewitness evidence was faulty, that there may have been confessions that were induced by really long periods of time in solitary confinement along with mental illness. So it really is a matter of what the jury believes. And I think what the best evidence is that video that was found on the young girl's phone with the grainy image of the man on the bridge. And the question is, will the jury conclude that that man was Richard Allen?
Well, and the families of Libby and Abby who are waiting to see what happens are with them. They've lost everything, and now they're waiting to see what a jury has to say. Thank you so much. In California, the USS Hornet Sea, Air, and Space Museum commemorating Veterans Day with a number of events to honor the men and women who fought for our nation. It will include the playing of the national anthem by the Hornet Horns, a wreath-laying ceremony at the ship's fantail, and a flyover from the USS Hornet Memorial Squadron. Well, our Veronica Macias was there. She joins us now from Alameda. Veronica, walk us through the events of this day. It has to be so meaningful for people.
It is very meaningful for these veterans. From the ones I've been able to talk to today, they really like coming together on this Veterans Day. And despite the rain, we're starting to see some people trickling in. We're expecting a crowd here for this Veterans Day commemoration that is soon to be underway here at the USS Hornet Sea and Air Space Museum. And I could tell you, like I said, these veterans coming together, saying the moment they step foot on this ship, it really just takes them back. So for this ceremony, we know that we're going to be joined very soon here by Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She's going to be here along with a Dublin historian who's going to discuss several area naval bases and, of course, like you said, the wreath-laying ceremony that they're expecting. And I'm actually told that there's a group of veterans here today that come together on the USS Hornet to volunteer their time to restore aircraft. And again, this brings back so many memories for them. And we talked to one veteran earlier today who's joining us now. That is Ellen Hirsch. And Ellen, you help give tours here on the ship and you tell people about the experiences because this played a critical role in the World War II, but also your experiences after coming back from Vietnam.
Yep.
We had some pretty bad experiences when we came back. Literally, we were spit on and cursed at. And now, 50 years later, the attitude of the country has completely changed.
And this place, this ship, the USS Hornet, also playing a vital role, you said, in not only helping you cope, but also healing and, building those friendships with other veterans.
Yeah, it really helped. I remember I wouldn't even talk for the last 45 years. I would not talk to my wife about anything that I experienced, and coming back aboard this ship has really helped. The camaraderie, the meaningfulness of this, that you have other people that have gone through exactly what you've gone through, and so they can understand. They know what it is, and it's a healing process.
For you, Veterans Day, what does it signify to have people come together and to honor our nation's veterans?
Wow, it's hard to say. It's just, I don't know what to say. It's very meaningful to me. My father served in World War II. My uncle served in World War II, and I served 2 tours in Vietnam. And it's very meaningful. It means a lot to me that this country still can honor their veterans.
We love to see it, and we thank you for your service so much, Ellen. Thank you. And like I was saying, this ship Reed played a critical role here in World War II. And from the chief experience officer, he was telling me earlier that surprisingly, they do not receive government funding. They depend on donations, on tours from people. So he's inviting the public to learn more about this ship. Come on down, because you're really providing a space for veterans to heal.
Veronica, thank you for that. And for our national audience, I want to show you something. Take a look at this photo. That guy on the right there is Reed Cowan's son, and the son of Sarah Fitzwater Cowan. That's my dad. I'm proud to show this photo to the national audience. He is Russell Cowan. He enlisted when his brother Roger of Duchesne, Utah, was drafted, his twin brother. And he said, no, I can't let my twin go Vietnam era alone. And so he went down to the office and signed up to serve our nation. And the service continued. My dad in Little Duchesne, Utah, was able to build a beautiful monument for veterans where every name in that small rural Utah community is honored proudly. Men and women who served our country. And it's my honor to let you see a little bit more about my dad, Russ. All right. Let's talk right now about what is going on here to the Pacific Northwest, and a live look right now from Seattle on this Veterans Day. Rain is in the forecast and more is on the way this weekend. Jess, I have to thank you for your service as well. You are one of our nation's servants.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much, Reed. Here's what's happening for us over in the Pacific Northwest. That live camera showed all the rain that you see right below me, sweeping throughout the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, all the way down into Oregon, and all the way down into areas like the Bay in San Francisco, where Veronica was just live. We are dealing with some heavy showers as we head into the next 24 hours. And that cold front, take a look behind me, is actually causing a lot of issues right around the corner too when it comes to Southern California and the fire that's still burning down there. Because by the time this cold front sweeps down there, we're really just left with gusty conditions, which does not help fire weather conditions by any means. But here we go back into the Pacific Northwest. Here's Oregon, there's Washington. A series of storms is expected to sweep throughout this area, not only today and tomorrow, but another band really expected to impact local communities widespread throughout that area as we head into this week's forecast. As we're gearing up for flooding conditions right around the corner too. Here's the center of that area of low pressure. It's continuing to sweep in from offshore, allowing for the National Weather Service to issue a flood watch throughout northern portions of Washington. They could see anywhere up to around 6 inches of rain. Taking a look at the next 72 hours, it's relatively impressive in areas like Forks, getting close to 4 inches in those lower level communities right around the corner. Reed?
All right, Jess, thank you so much. Abortion rights advocates make their argument to the left-leaning Wisconsin Supreme Court today over whether to enforce a pre-Civil War abortion ban. We're talking about an 1849 law that says abortion, other than in the case to save a mother's life, makes one guilty of manslaughter. That law revised in the 1950s to a felony. We're watching that state's high court to rule in a few weeks, and we'll let you know as soon as they do. Jumping the map now to the state of California on the West Coast, where nearly 54% of voters turned down a state proposition. What did it do? It outlawed forced labor in state prisons and jails. Now, people who were for that failed ballot measure wanted to remove involuntary servitude as punishment against crimes. California, by the way, has the second highest prison population in the country at 94,000 inmates. We thank you for watching CBS News 24/7 on this Veterans Day. Listen, if you see a veteran, thank a veteran. If you see a firefighter, thank a firefighter. We certainly offer our gratitude to them and to you for watching.